Eric Edholm does a great job of covering the NFL writer for Pro Football Weekly. We'll see if he has a little insight on, I guess you can say, the rift going on in New England. What's going on, Eric? First and foremost, appreciate it. Happy New Year, my friend.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Good bumper music, too. As a child of the 70s, I appreciate a little Boz Scaggs.
There you go. See that? Well, we knew. We somewhat, I typically say on the air, it's not a jukebox. I don't take requests, but I kind of like that music as well. So.
All right, I'll text you one next time. That'll be my...
All right, that's fine. That's fine. You give me a list of your bumper music going in forward. So I got you, my friend. All right.
Dan and Michael.
All right. All right. Let me get your thoughts on the article that was written by ESPN. I know you had an article as well online with your sentiments. This is not, to me, it's not anything really groundbreaking, earth-shattering. I guess my thing is I find it hard to believe that Tom Brady would go to Robert Kraft and say, you're going to have to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, and then Robert Kraft would go to Belichick and force his hand and say, you're going to have to get rid of this kid.
Right, and you know that I maybe unless I missed the specific mention of that part, I know they explained how that all went about, but I don't think it was ever said implicitly that Brady walked into Kraft's office and said, here's what's going down, right?
But no, it wasn't.
That,
yeah.
You know, Kraft has this unbelievable loyalty. I mean, I think he's got 5 kids, and Brady might be, or 4 kids, and Brady might be number 5. So,
right.
Their relationship is different than any other owner quarterback in maybe in NFL history. So, yeah, obviously, if that happened, that would be kind of stunning, or surprising, I guess. But, it's implied that Belichick didn't want to do this. I mean, it's even flat out said, I think, that he didn't want to trade Garoppolo, that he always had, that he felt like he had the heir to the throne, sitting in his quarterback room already. So the whole thing is very interesting. I think, like you said, this isn't a bombshell. It's not like there's some crazy controversy. It's just a great, detailed painting of what might be the end of the empire. And, hey, they could still go win it all in a couple weeks.
Well, that's what I said. I tweeted out that an angry Tom Brady basically equals a Super Bowl title. I mean, listen, I know they've dealt with this before, right? I mean, the crisis is their brand, so to speak, even though when they had the Spygate, they still went on to lose that Super Bowl. But, if you look at – I just want to get one more thought in on this situation. Listen, you know this. You've been covering the NFL for a long time. Even if Brady turns around and says he wants to play 4 or 5 more years, do you think they will regret the fact that they traded Jimmy Garoppolo? Because he seems poised to be a franchise quarterback, and it doesn't seem as though they realize that Father Time's still undefeated. And the question would be, okay, what's your plan B going forward if Brady can't go another 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah, and even if Brady says he wants to play for 3, 4, 5 more years, there's no guarantee he'll play at this kind of level. And obviously, there have been moments this season where you see the little glimpses of age creep in, and then and then he backs it up with brilliance. So, to his credit, he's sort of stiff-armed Father Time now for a couple of years, and can he do it for another few? I don't know. I mean, nobody knows. I think even Belichick has had his doubts about that. And that's why, to me, the interesting part of the story is that Belichick could just say, all right, I'm out. I'm going to hit the boat and go to Nantucket, and I'm good. That's what we're all of a sudden now kind of looking at is this Bill Belichick's final run as their coach. But as far as Brady, yeah, I mean, I think Bill wanted to find a way to make it work where they paid Garoppolo like a starter and kept Brady on and found a way to make it work and then picked the right time to make that transition. But, in some way, one way or another, his hand was forced on this thing.
Hey, listen, if I'm a team like the Giants right now, I call up Robert Kraft and say, listen, what can we do to get Belichick? I mean, why not? I mean, you find, it's like the marriage, they're arguing and someone's going to stay at a hotel for a couple nights. You know what? Take advantage of it. You might as well make the call.
And look, they just happen to have the second pick in the draft, and as the story indicated, look, they're gonna have to draft a quarterback. So I mean, I guess if there's ever a way for something like that to work out, this is the time. But wouldn't that be fascinating? I mean, Belichick has always revered that franchise, that Giants team. And that's always been the team that has sort of been put in a different category than any others not named the Patriots. So is it going to happen? I don't know. But, imagine a 1 or 2 year handoff from Belichick to McDaniels. the way it was supposed to go with Bill Parcells and Belichick with the Jets.
That's right.
Our fantasies are running away with us now.
Do you think McDaniels would be the best candidate for the Giants? I mean, seeming that there was a mutual interest there.
It's a good spot for him because he has that chance at picking second to handpick Eli's successor. And whether Eli's on for another year or not, I mean, that opportunity is rare. Are there some things they have to work out? Absolutely. Odell Beckham's contract, cleaning up a locker room that had its share of troubles this year and a lot of tension. It wasn't like McDaniels was noted for his ability to put out fires in Denver. I mean, what drove him out of there, they lost a lot of games after winning his first 6, but it was also his turning a cold shoulder to people and trading Jay Cutler right away and just, not dealing with issues. And so, those are things that will really test whether he truly has matured and learned from his past experience. So is it the perfect landing spot for him? I don't know, but it certainly is better than a lot of others that are open right now.
How about Chicago and a young quarterback in Trubisky, even though they pulled the trigger for Glennon? I mean, how about the head coaching job, the vacancy in Chicago? What are you hearing?
And Josh has a unique perspective there because his brother Ben has been on the staff the past 2 years. He's been an offensive assistant. So he could tell his brother exactly how much of a worker Trubisky is, and exactly how much talent he thinks he has and what the ceiling is, what it's like to work for Ryan Pace, the GM, Ted Phillips, the CEO and president, George McCaskey and ownership. He'll say, hey, here's the deal. Here's what the media is like. Here's what the fan base is like. And here's what your star quarterback or maybe star quarterback is like. So I give that a shot. That would be a home run, I think, for the Bears, and a great ground rule double or plan B would be Pat Shurmur from the Vikings. I think he checks off a lot of boxes that they would look for in the next head coach.
Yeah, that was one of the names I brought up earlier in the week as well, Shurmur. And again, he's from the familiarity with the Eagles as well, so they kind of look at him as another quarterback whisperer, if you will. All right, let me get your thoughts on the Eagles with this offense now with Nick Foles. He had the big game against the Giants. They struggled against the Raiders. Obviously, he was only in there for a couple series against the Dallas Cowboys. I was talking a lot of Eagles fans off the ledges about 3 or so weeks ago, but I do think there are concerns here with this offense and Foles because, look, he's no Carson Wentz, and if you can roll him out of the pocket a little bit, he's prone to make mistakes. So where's your confidence level right now with the Eagles and this offense led by Foles going forward?
Yeah, I think the two most telling things that Doug Peterson has said about it is the fact that, essentially they tried to use the Carson Wentz playbook with Nick, and that, it didn't exactly work the way they had hoped. That was one of them. The number two thing was that he's going to have Nate Sudfeld on ready alert. I mean, the fact that he didn't sort of cant that out, that there's at least this slim possibility that if things go horribly awry in whoever they play in a couple weeks, they might consider a switch to a guy who doesn't have a lot of NFL experience. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But obviously, third downs, that's really where it's got to happen.
Yep.
I mean, if you run the ball great, fine. Maybe that's less of a worry. But the ability to convert third downs is always important. It's certainly important in a playoff game.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Carson Wentz was able to do all season long. They were able to convert third downs at a high rate, and they were actually defensively able to stop teams on third down. Again, a couple minutes, Eric Edholm joining us on a Football Friday, NFL writer for Pro Football Weekly. Great follow on Twitter as well. All right, handicap, while I got you for a couple more minutes. The games over the weekend, I'm really intrigued by the Jacksonville and Buffalo game. And I know if McCoy doesn't go, chances are their offense is not, they're going to be shut down. But I'm looking at it from a Jacksonville standpoint because I've said this for a year now. I still believe Bortles' career is salvageable, but are you getting the Bortles that was 21-29 for 350 against the Texans, or are you getting the 18 for 35 with a couple picks against the Tennessee Titans, Bortles?
Yeah, and this is the Bills secondary, and Sean McDermott, their head coach, and the coaching staff on the defensive side of the ball is pretty impressive too. And they're very opportunistic. I know it was a little more so early in the year, the first 7 games. I think they were like plus 14 on the turnover margin after 7. That's incredible, But they were taking balls away, and that's what Blake Bortles historically in his career, when he struggled, it's because he's forcing passes and, being a little careless. And, they may not have a full cast of receivers out there. Marquise Lee's going to try to play and all that. So, yeah, I mean, this is this is a great test for Bortles. And on the flip side, let's say they get up 10-0 or they get a defensive score or whatever. Do they take the ball out of Bortles' hands at that point, like they did early in the year? That's going to be the test for me. Do they trust Bortles to control the game after they've gotten it? You know, that'll tell us a lot right there.
Yeah, like if there's a third down and you have to throw, you have to make the play in a 4-minute offense. No, I agree because, you know, going back to the Eagles for a second, you saw that a couple series against the Raiders and even against the Cowboys a little bit where Doug kind of pulled the strings back with Nick a little bit, not wanting to put him in a bad position or a bad spot. So I think it bears worth watching tomorrow, or I should say Sunday, with Buffalo and Jacksonville. You know, the Rams, to me, I know they're a young team, a great second year for Jared Goff. You got Todd Gurley, MVP candidate, and McVay. You know, Atlanta, though, they've just never really I look at Atlanta and I say to myself, they're right for the picking because they never really found their rhythm or groove throughout the season like they did last year.
Absolutely. I mean, I think at this point, comparing them to the 16 club is just unfair, right? I mean, you know, Matt Ryan was an MVP, and you know, Julio was doing his thing, the run game tandem, you know, and by the end of the year, the defense is playing really well. In fact, that's the one thing that I think has carried over. I mean, maybe the defense took a little bit of a step back early in the year, but now you've got Vic Beasley rushing the passer again. You got Deion Jones, this really fast, instinctive linebacker making plays. You got Grady Jarrett, the Super Bowl hero. Everybody was anointed as the next big thing. Started slowly, now really coming on. So if they have a chance, I believe it or not, I think it's the defense making stops against Jared Goff and Gurley and all those guys that could give them that chance. And one little hidden edge, I'll just throw it out there. Rams just lost their kicker. Greg Zuerlein is a very good kicker.
Yeah, great point.
Sam missed, you know, and like it's, you know, tense game comes down to a last
playoff games. Kicker. Yep, special teams.
Yeah. Absolutely. That worries me a little.
That's a great point. How about Tennessee and Kansas City? And I looked at the line on this one. It's a pretty large line. But Kansas City, I know as crazy as it sounds, I still think there's a ton of pressure on them because it's an Andy Reid-led team. It seems as though everyone is trying to run out Alex Smith for years now. And I know they're at home. They're a different team at home. But I think they actually have to make a deep run here because if Alex Smith doesn't perform well or Andy Reid has his issues with clock management and they're one and done, or even if they lose in the divisional playoff, they're probably going to be looking now to go to Mahomes forward. And I know we had this conversation before the season started. I had week 9 or 10. I thought Mahomes was going to start, and I know we both laughed about it, but I think there's a ton of pressure on Kansas City this year.
Absolutely. You know, and Smith has been in, you know, somewhat of a similar position before. I guess a little different that he was benched mid-season before the Niners went to the Super Bowl and then traded him to Kansas City. But you know, I think he knows that, look, I mean, this is what would happen if he did win a Super Bowl? First of all, that would be fascinating. You kind of have to bring him back.
Absolutely.
Short of that, right. I mean, I'm with you. They got their little glimpse of Mahomes in Week 17. It wasn't perfect, but he flashed those skills that they wanted to trade up for and did get. So, yeah, I mean, I have a feeling that Alex Smith could be playing in Arizona, Jacksonville, Cleveland, Washington, one of those cities that could use a good stopover at quarterback. And, oh, by the way, he's coming off a career year, so they'd be getting a pretty good player. But you're right, that pressure does exist. I think it's real. Are they the better team than the Titans? Yes, I think so.
And Carolina and New Orleans, if Atlanta were to lose, the winner of Carolina and New Orleans would play the Eagles. So I know a lot of Eagles fans are going to be watching those two games respectively. But New Orleans, to me, it's just a different team indoors. The defense has played well. They can run the football. They can ding and dunk you to death. Handicap this game. Who do you like?
The one team that the Panthers have had a good run defense all year long. The one team that has given them the most trouble are the Saints. That's the only team to run for more than 120 yards against them this year, and they've done it twice. They did in both games. You know, the first one in Carolina was a shock because the Saints were playing terribly at the time. Panthers had started well. I think they were 2-0. That was a surprise. By the time they faced each other again a few weeks back, week 13 or 15, whatever it was, you know, it was a closer game, but the Saints kind of flexed their muscles a little bit in that one, and then they kind of held them off, and it was still a double-digit win. So I will say this. I think Cam Newton is going to play a much better game in this one, and I think they're going to have a little more success containing Ingram and Kamara than they have in the first two matchups. So can the Saints still win in their building? Absolutely. But I think they're a little more vulnerable than I thought they were, maybe even a month ago or less.
Two more. Got about a couple, three more minutes before I let you get out of here. I'm curious to get your take on this. And I know Zimmer's never really fully come out and committed to Case Keenum, even though I'm a believer and he's played exceptionally well. Yeah, Bradford practicing. You still have Bridgewater. To me, that's going to be a really interesting dynamic. Do you envision any scenario where Bradford would play during these playoffs? And also in the offseason, what quarterback stays and what quarterback goes?
And that's why I think these playoffs are so fascinating. Like, this situation is unique. You know, the Alex Smith deal is his own thing. You know, the Patriots and everything they're going through is we never really quite seen anything exactly like that before. So there's so many storylines heading into this playoffs. And this Vikings thing is just, you know, I've been writing about this since like August and just trying to figure out, all of these guys are free agents after the year. The only quarterback they have under contract is a guy named Kyle Sloter. So, you know, they have some decisions to make here, and I can't wait to see. Look, if Keenum plays well, I think there's no way they can let him go. If he struggles badly in one or two playoff games, let's say, then you've got a real decision to make. And I know Zimmer loves Teddy. That's something you can't dismiss. I would think, even though Bradford was supposed to be the guy, and he had a great week one, and you know they trotted him back out there in week 5. He tried to go with the bulky knee. Even though he was the guy at one point, I think he's the least likely of the three to be back next year. Then again, there's a chance for any combination to happen.
And I'll say this in closing, and the other shoe to drop would be Kirk Cousins in Washington, because you got about 8 or 10 teams out there that need a quarterback. Minnesota's got 3 on the roster, and you got Kirk Cousins in Washington. And, you know, again, that's a lot of money they would potentially have to pay him for 1 year.
And you feel more and more as time goes on that it's just not going to be tenable. It's just something that they, you know, they're almost – Jay Gruden's sort of post-season comments were hey, look, we were 7-9. I can't say anybody played well. That was the question when we were asked how he played. So
yeah,
think about the musical chairs we could have. We could have Smith, Bradford, Cousins. You know, you don't see that many veteran quarterbacks shift places. You know, it's like a game of Jenga. You're just trying to figure out who's going to fit where. And I can't. I don't know. This is going to be a really interesting postseason and then off season.
All right, listen, great insight as always. I appreciate you jumping on board on a Friday. Happy New Year to you. Enjoy the games. Hopefully we can talk again very soon. Always appreciate the stuff. Great stuff, Eric.
I'd love to. Thank you.
All right, you got it. Be well. Eric Edholm, really good stuff. He brought up a couple great points.